Hello, what's up everybody? Hope you're doing well and staying healthy, happy, and sane in these isolating times. In light of all the changes right now in relation to health and fitness, and all the gyms being closed, and rec centers, and yoga studios, and pretty much every indoor place that we play around with movement, I figured it would be a great time to start doing some videos on Animal Flow. Animal Flow is an awesome bodyweight movement practice which really helps with your strength, your stability, your mobility, and I would say also your fluidity. Something we don't think a lot about in relation to typical sort of fitness practices and strength and conditioning practices is moving with different sorts of qualities, you could say. So moving with grace, moving with fluidity, moving like water, moving hard and fast. Different sorts of, movement qualities, if we want to call them that. They really only start to show up when you start exploring the world of movement, which has now become much more popular, largely thanks to people like Ido Portal and Mike Fitch, who are doing all kinds of cool work. But it really is a paradigm shift in relation to the more kind of linear approaches to strength and fitness. And I don't say that in any kind of judgmental or negative way. They're just different. So once you start kind of broadening beyond, the paradigms of fitness and the strength and conditioning, and you get into the movement realm, you really start to think differently about how you're moving instead of just repeating a movement or doing something for a certain amount of time or distance. You start thinking about things like movement quality, which is a wonderful thing to be aware of. It's not something to obsess about. In my opinion, the pursuit of perfection is a great way to lose joy. That's been my experience. Trying to adhere to a high standard of movement is awesome, but trying to always go after whatever constitutes perfect, I would say, it's a great way to lose joy and to lose the enjoyment and the fun and the lightness in relation to what you're pursuing. So I leave it to you, food for thought. I think keeping the emphasis on enjoyment is extremely important, particularly for longevity, if you're going to do this throughout your lifetime, which I sincerely hope you will. Pursuing movement, growing with it, evolving, trying new things. Enjoyment is extremely important. Embracing discomfort, is, I would say, kind of a part of the ride, but doing so with a purpose, not just, doing it to do it, doing it purposefully. But perfection and enjoyment, in my experience, they don't always accompany one another. However, I'll leave it to you to explore that. So, all this talking, blah, blah, blah. This is Animal Flow. I'm first going to show you something called Traveling Beast. And I'm going to show you forward and backward Traveling Beast. And then a spin-off that some people like to play with, which I guess you would just call lateral Traveling Beast. It's not really a part of the Animal Flow modicum, but why be confined by any paradigm? It's good to move beyond the paradigm, I think, when you feel ready to do so. So this will be forward and backward beast. So, that is forward and backward traveling beast. A couple of things. You might have noticed that my contralaterally moving hand and foot, so opposites, I'm trying to touch down hand and foot at the same time. This isn't how the animals move. They would stagger their steps a little more because it's more efficient and it's less energy. However, it's not quite what we're going for. This is to expand your capabilities. So touching down the hand and the foot at the same time is harder. And therefore you develop more strength, you develop more stability, and you'll also even develop more mobility and just control of your frame, your structure. So, yeah, my knees, I don't know if you can see it with the lateral or the forward-backward position, but my knees are actually in front of my hips. So this would be a good positioning for static beast versus a lot of people will favor being out here because, I don't know, they just do. Here though, moving like this, traveling around, actually makes the movement a little bit easier because you can rely a lot more on the strength of your big strong legs to carry your body around. So I'm in a perfect position to set up for lateral traveling beast, which again isn't really part of the typical animal flow world, but it's a great pattern. And exploring lateral movement is very important. It's something most people don't do enough of, and it's just a good skill to be able to kind of call on and play with when you want. So this would be lateral traveling beast. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to step again contralaterally, except when my feet are wide, my hands are close. Then when I step inwards and my feet are now close, my hands are wide. So in a way, I'm always going like this. Etc. I don't want to be like this when the top mirrors the bottom. But that's because it's just not very efficient as far as locomoting along the ground. And we do want to think efficiency. You also want to try to move in a way where your trunk or your torso is not moving a whole lot. Because if you find you're moving around a lot, it might mean that you're just not controlling your body enough. It might mean too that you're moving a little too fast, because as you speed up, that's where you're going to be more likely to lose control of your body, which is just kind of a good rule of thumb. A lot of personal trainers will practice routinely slowing people down, which is difficult at first, but it just helps so much with technique and with, the awareness of your body, whatever it is that you're doing. And it actually allows you a chance to be more aware of what you're doing. How you feel, what's happening, what's not happening, how you're breathing. So slowing down really promotes awareness, which is good for absolutely everything. When you master, I use that word lightly, when you get a good deep sense of moving slowly, I would say from that place, you can start to play with speeding up. So we have forward and backward traveling beast, a little bit of lateral beast, and now let's get into crab. Good old crab. Again, what I'm trying to do here is move contralaterally. So if I move my left foot here, I'm pairing it with my right hand. And as I'm moving backwards, it goes toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel. Also too, I'm trying to, as best I can, I'm trying to arch my back to keep my chest up high, which is going to recruit more muscles in my posterior chain, or just the muscles along the back of the body. I don't want to be moving around like this. As best I can, I want to be traveling with my chest up, feeling my hamstrings helping out in this particular pattern. So, yeah, that was the backwards traveling crab. Forward traveling crab would look like this. Now I'm going heel toe, heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. And I'm trying to very deliberately place my hand on the ground versus just clumping around and coming down hard. Animal flow can be hard on your wrists. It's also one of the best ways I've ever come across as far as strengthening the wrist. It's fantastic. And also keeping it mobile. And if your joints are mobile and strong, kind of like bamboo, which is a metaphor or an example that Ido Portal likes to cite in relation to developing lower body strength. Having suppleness but also strength is a great way to go. If you go too far in any one direction, if you get really super strong but you're rigid, or if you're like Gumby and you're super yogi mobile, that can be quite hard on your joints, interestingly enough. And it doesn't also prepare you for other movement endeavors where you're going to need a little more solidity and strength. It's nice to find that sort of middle way. This is the notion of being slightly more of a generalist versus the specializing in one or two attributes and getting super good at them, which you'll usually pay a price for later, which we see a lot with professional athletes who've gotten so good at their specialization, but they paid a price for it. The body enjoys, it thrives a little more with a more generalistic approach without being random. If you have any questions about that, please reach out. It's an important concept. The ego doesn't like it, I find, but the body loves it. Yeah, suppleness and strength, like bamboo. So yeah, you can play around with the crab just like you would with the beast. Forward to backward, and then also lateral. So from here, same concept. When my hands are wide, my feet will be relatively narrow. So as I step in, one set of my limbs is always wide and the other one is more narrow. My feet are narrow at the moment, or wide at the moment. My hands are relatively narrow. And I just switch back and forth so that I can creep along the ground, loving my crab life. Now I come back. Great long day at the ocean. I'm making my way back towards the beach. Gonna see what's happening. Hopefully don't get eaten by a seagull. That would suck. Etc. If you're playing around with these and your wrists start to bug you, practice a little bit of this. This is called wrist relief. And what I'm doing is just gently putting some pressure in and around where my knuckles meet one another. And what that does is just kind of stretches out the wrist. In animal flow, the wrists are always like this. They're always being loaded like that, which is the adaptive catalyst which allows them to be stronger. You're constantly giving the body something to adapt to, and the adaptation is it becomes stronger and more resilient. Without some kind of reason, the body will just, or without some kind of a reason, the body won't get stronger, or more aerobically efficient, or more mobile, or whatever. It just stays as it is. So it needs to be challenged in order to adapt. And it's these good positive adaptations, or eustress adaptations as they're called. That's what training is all about. If you push too hard too fast, it becomes distress and it breaks you down, possibly causing injury. So we always want to be, as best we can, moving towards positive adaptations. So, be kind to your wrists, definitely challenge them, give them something to adapt to, but also listen to them. The body will always say, hey, enough. You just have to be able to hear it. So, in conclusion, if you want one more final thing to play around with, I'm going to show you something called an underswitch. The underswitch is a wonderful bridge between beast and crab, and vice versa. This is the movement I was referencing earlier in relation to it's a bridging movement. So this is how you transition from one locomotive pattern to another in this particular, or in these contexts. So the underswitch from beast would look like this. So here I am, set up beast, and if I was to want to do a right leg underswitch, I end up in crab. If I do a right leg underswitch from crab, it brings me back to my initial position. Left leg underswitch, and same thing, left leg underswitch. So you can always get a sense of, with this movement, if you're doing it properly, your limbs are always traveling underneath you. A lot of people will do, I guess what I would call an overswitch at first, which is actually much harder, funnily enough, and they'll kind of go like this, which is by no means wrong. It's just, it's not part of the animal flow way of approaching movement. And it also doesn't lend as well to animal flow movements that we learn down the road, which are spin-offs of the underswitch. The underswitch is the initiator for these other movements. So if you do an overswitch, as I would call it, then it's much harder to access the other movements. So, from crab, if I was to do, again, a right leg underswitch, I want my right leg to move underneath my body. So I'm moving underneath, and I land in beast. If I want to go all the way around with a left leg underswitch, my left leg travels underneath me, and here I am again in crab. So, the last thing we'll look at is how to link the two locomotive patterns, if you feel like playing with this, and it's a lot of fun once you get it. The underswitch is the bridge between the two. So, it would look something like this. Etc. That was fun. So there's a little intro to some of the movements, and there are many of them, the movements of animal flow. And yeah, please play around with them. Be mindful of your wrists, wrist relief as needed. And as far as how to gauge or quantify how much or how little of this stuff to do. It's quite hard at first, so I would do no more than 30 minutes at a time of just playing with the movement. Take as much rest as you need, and just try to feel good about what you're doing. Feel free to play around, experiment, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to assist. Okay, bye for now.